Students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is race and segregation. And here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab and take some notes. In the last lessons, you learned about ethnicity, which is a group of people with shared cultural traits. Now you're going to learn about race, a group of people with shared physical traits. We call these physical traits phenotypes. And unlike culture, which must be learned, phenotypes are genetic, meaning that people are born with them. Race is a bizarre category because in some ways it's meaningless. In other ways, it's incredibly meaningful. Let's start with why it's meaningless. Aside from the actual physical traits that people share, there is no evidence that members of race historically had anything else in common. It's like how some people today have a little hair growing on the knuckles of their hand. Maybe you do. But I bet you've never thought to seek out other people who did or didn't have hair on their knuckles and try to bond with them. And I bet you've never judged anyone else based on whether they had hair on their knuckles or not. That's what race is like. It's a collection of genetic traits, but nothing else. The thing is, in today's world, members of a race really do share things in common, because through racism, our world has reified race. It has made it real and meaningful. Imagine if the people with no hair on their knuckles had enslaved the people that do have hair on their knuckles, and then not allowed them to go to school, and then made them live in polluted areas. After a while, the people with the hair really would be different. They might have less education or lower life expectancy. And that's why race is meaningful. It was a meaningless concept, but it has been given meaning through racism. One way that race has been made real is through segregation, the enforced separation of racial groups. Let's look at 3 ways that this process has happened. The first is called redlining, and it deals with home loans. Redlining is banks' refusal to grant home loans to people of a certain race. It's called redlining because banks and government lenders drew red lines on city maps around neighborhoods that had high numbers of non-white people living in them. They then used the maps to decide which people to give loans to, and they denied the loans to anyone who lived in the neighborhoods that they had outlined in red. For pretty much everyone, buying a home requires a loan because homes cost a lot of money. The inability of certain races to obtain loans meant that they did not have freedom of where to live, and were instead forced to live in specific areas. The second is called white flight, and it refers to the movement of white people out of cities and into the suburbs. White flight started in the 1940s during a process called suburbanization, which you'll learn more about later in the year. As white people left cities, cities became mostly non-white and suburbs mostly white. Non-white families were unable to move to the suburbs because of redlining, and because of a third cause of residential segregation, restrictive covenants. A restrictive covenant is an agreement forbidding the sale of a home to members of a certain race. When white people bought houses in suburbs, they sometimes had to sign a contract promising that they would never sell the house to a non-white person. So white people moved to suburbs while non-whites remained in cities, and within cities, there continued to be neighborhoods that were mostly white and neighborhoods that were mostly non-white. All of this contributed to residential segregation. The last term is apartheid, a Dutch word meaning apartness. This was a system of racial segregation that existed in South Africa until the 1990s. Apartheid was similar to the Jim Crow policies of the American South that you probably learned about in US history. Now let's look at some maps. These are racial dot maps of US cities, and I want you to learn to see what segregation looks like. On these maps, each person is represented as a dot at the location where they live, and the color of each dot represents that person's race. This information was collected from the US Census. In this map of Sacramento, California, I do see some segregation in this area up here, which is mostly white. I'm guessing this is a suburban area. On the other hand, I don't see a lot of segregation in this part of the city because there's a mixture of colored dots, and that means that people of different races are all living near each other. So based on this map, I would say that segregation in Sacramento is low to medium. There is some, but it's not everywhere. Now let's look at another city where segregation is more extreme. This is St. Louis, Missouri. North St. Louis, this entire northern portion of the city, is almost entirely black. South City, the area south of here, is mostly white, with small concentrated pockets of red where Hispanic people live. One sign that segregation is more extreme in St. Louis is that I see clear boundaries separating different racial groups. Look at this line here. It's probably a highway or a wide street, and it crisply divides black and white in this highly segregated city. Here's one more example, Chicago, Illinois. What do you think? Does this map indicate that segregation in Chicago is low, medium, or high? Pause for a moment to think about that. I would say that Chicago is highly segregated because there are many areas with only one color of dot. The south side down here is mostly black, and the north side up here is mostly white. The west side over here is black and Hispanic. And here we see a small ethnic enclave in Chinatown. If you're confused why I said that Chicago is highly segregated, review the video and compare this map of Chicago to the first map of Sacramento. Now it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any of them, rewind the video and look again. I will see you in class. Bye, students.